Hello everyone! I just wanted to make a quick video this week and give you a quick overview of some of the things you're going to be learning, and also hopefully give you a little bit of tutorial on some of the grammar lesson, which can sometimes be the hardest part of any of the lessons. So first of all, for our overview this week, you're going to have a grammar lesson talking about sentence fragments and how to fix those. Also, there will be a little lesson on writing effective paragraphs. And you'll also begin your first essay of the semester, which is the love letter assignment. So a couple notes on the love letter. So you're going to have 2 weeks to complete this assignment. This is also a fairly informal paper. So it is okay to use I statements, you know, I like this, or this is my favorite thing, that sort of thing. Also, our love letter assignment is going to just be kind of almost a way of sort of loosening up and getting to enjoy writing a little bit more. So I'm hoping to see a lot of creativity in this, and it's okay to use humor and things like that. So please don't feel nervous about this assignment. You will have 2 weeks to complete it, and it's only 1 or 2 pages long. So I'm hoping to soothe some of your anxieties when it comes to that. But it's a great assignment. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So I wanted to give you a quick tutorial here a little bit on some of the elements of the lesson for this week. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about fragments versus complete sentences. So in a complete sentence in English, we have a couple of different elements in there. We want to know who performed the action in the sentence and what action was performed. So for example, a very, very simple sentence would be Jack jumped. In this sentence, we have both a subject, which is Jack, which is who the sentence is about, and we have an action that he performed. He jumped. A little slightly more complex sentence, Jack jumped higher than everyone else. Again, that sentence has those core elements of having a subject, which is what the sentence is about, and a verb, which is the action that's performed in the sentence. Incomplete sentences would be anything that's missing one of those elements. So here's some examples. Jack higher than everyone else, higher than anyone else. Any of those things would be incomplete sentences because they either don't tell us who's performing the action or they don't tell us the action, or something like that. So a good way to think about fragments, if you're trying to determine if a sentence that you've written is a fragment, imagine this circumstance. So imagine that you're standing somewhere and a friend of yours walks up to you and he just says, "over the summer," and then walks away. You would be left with a lot of questions. Over the summer, what? Who? What happened over the summer? Was it you over the summer or someone else over the summer? What happened to who in that situation? So an incomplete sentence, like over the summer, leaves us with questions. We don't know what happened. If your friend walked up to you and said, "over the summer, I went swimming," you would know, oh, okay, I know who we're talking about and I know what the action is that's happened. If your friend walked up and said, "over the summer, I went," you would also say, "you went where? What happened? I don't understand." Or if you said, "over the summer, you expect more at that point. Those incomplete sentences leave us with questions. What happened? Who did it happen to? What are we talking about? So imagine that for a moment. If you're trying to figure out, if you're looking at a sentence and you're trying to figure out if it's complete or incomplete, imagine if a friend of yours just walks up to you randomly and says that. Would you understand what they were saying or not? If you would not understand what they were saying, then more than likely it's going to be a fragment. So that's just a little bit of a way to frame this. So let's look at some examples of fragments. So what is a fragment? So a fragment is an incomplete sentence. It's missing one of these elements that we need. A complete sentence has to have a subject. That's something that the sentence is about, a person, place, or thing that it's about. And there also needs to be an action word. We need to know what happens with that person, place, or thing. Also, it needs to be arranged properly. In English, sentences are arranged in what we call an SVO order, or subject, verb, object. There are some other languages where you can rearrange the order of these, but in English it really pretty much needs to go in this order for the most part, as a general rule. So as an example, Jane walked to the store. So in this case, Jane is the subject. That's what the sentence is about. Walked is the verb or action word. We know what Jane does. To the store is the object. We know it's the object because that is what the action is performed on or performed to. If you're reading this sentence, you might say, oh, well, store is a noun. Is that the subject of the sentence? It's not, because it's not what the sentence is talking about. If you rearrange the sentence and you said, the store is where Jane walked, then the store would be the subject of the sentence. So in general, you're going to have the subject first in English sentences. So here's an example that it could not be. Store Jane to the walks. That doesn't make sense in English. So keep that in mind. If you have a confusing sentence, you want to bring it back down to those simple elements. What is the subject? What is the sentence about? What is the verb? What is the action being performed? And then what the object would be what the action is being performed to. So I'm not going to go too much into the object in a sentence. I'm just going to kind of give you that overview because that's not the super important part of this lesson to grasp. But the most important things to remember is that the subject in general is going to be first in the sentence, and then you're going to have the verb after that, okay? So try to remember those things. Okay, so as we're going on, so how do I identify a fragment? You want to see, is the sentence missing something? So for example, here it says, to the store. This is a phrase that leaves us with those questions. Why is it a fragment? We don't know who it's talking about. We don't know what happens. There's no verb and there's no subject. So Jane walked to the store would be the complete sentence because Jane would be the subject, walked would be the verb. So of course fragments can get a lot more complicated than just these simple examples. So here's some things to look for. So you want to look for introductory words and make sure that your sentence is complete. So for example, an introductory word here, while I was in Europe, and then the phrase is not completed after that. If you're looking, you want to look for words like while, from, since, because, words that when you put them in front of a phrase, you're going to be left with a question if you don't finish that sentence. While I was in Europe, well, what happened? What happened while you were in Europe? From the day I was born, well, what happened? What are you talking about in there? So you want to watch out for words that sort of introduce the sentence like that. In this particular case, there's not a verb, there's not an action. We don't know what happened. So here's an example of a way to fix that. While I was in Europe, I tried new foods. Now, just as a little note here, we talked about a friend walking up and just saying, while I was in Europe. That wouldn't make sense. Now, people do use fragments in verbal speech all the time, like, for example, in answers to questions. So someone might ask you in real life, oh, when did you learn how to crochet? And they'd say, while I was in Europe. So they might answer verbally with a fragment. But in our writing, we want to try and avoid those fragments. So you got to watch out for that. Okay, so here's some ways to fixing that. So while I was in Europe, I tried new foods. So we added on here, we have now a subject and we have a verb. What did I do? I tried. I tried something new. Okay, now a little bit more complex here. So there's a fragment. It says, took the donut. So this, you might look at this and say, well, this has a noun, which is a donut, and it has a verb, which is took. However, the subject of the sentence is missing. There's not really, it doesn't say who took the donut. So in this particular case, you really have to rely on that subject, verb, object arrangement, because you could just, if you're just simply looking for a noun and a verb in the sentence, this sentence has both a noun and a verb. It has the donut is the noun and then took is the verb.